Mike. How's it going?
Good, Frank. Good to see you.
Yeah, same here. What's new?
Good week.
Right.
Yeah, great week. How about yourself?
Yeah, it was a really good week, you know. Yeah, it always is a good week. It always is a good week because I tell myself that, I guess.
Well, I mean, there's really
Sometimes
no
I'm
other
lying
ways
to
to.
myself.
There's no other way to look at it.
Yeah. You know what's funny, though? Like, I could, and again, I could be having, like, I could fall into this shitty mood.
Yeah.
But whenever I put these headphones on, it all goes away. So I now take them to Karen's house.
So now you're just permanently wearing headphones.
Karen's like, what do you have? I put the headphones on. I'm like, hey, honey, how you doing? So I walk around with headphones all the time.
Stay in a great space.
Yeah, it's a great space. So
I
I
like
walk
it.
around with a mic and everything and headphones. Like, hey, Karen, what's for dinner tonight?
Hey, we do what we got to do.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, get through another day of life.
Yes, all right.
What are we diving into this week?
Let's talk about identification, the understanding of it. We could go deep into it, but just the parameters of it.
And wait, when you say identification, you're referring to kind of social conditioning, or
Yeah, social conditioning. But what we learn is, and I'm going to take it just onto myself and tell the story from there. So this is how I perceive it and look at it.
Okay.
And as I started. So when I had an identification of something, this me and this is who I am, I was raised this way. And, it's actually funny. I heard somebody say this. Human beings aren't raised. You raise cattle. You raise chickens. You develop human beings. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. You don't
truly though.
But, identification, we actually narrow the field. And that's what it is. We have a very limited understanding of identification. So when we limit the understanding of identification, what we identify to is we don't expand and learn more from other cultures and other people. But I feel the object is to expand at your own pace.
So wait, what you're saying is we identify and kind of create this idea of who we are, and we stay stuck within that, right?
All right. So I identify myself with this is who I am. This is how I was raised.
Okay.
I used to box. I used
this
to
race,
do this.
I'm this religion.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, I'm from this culture.
Yeah. And so when we go to expand the identification, it doesn't mean you wipe any of that stuff out. I still box. I still did all that other stuff. But what I do is I expand it to other fields and I start to identify with other cultures and other people because we really can. We could identify with the world, and actually we could get to the point where we identify with the whole universe, right? As we find out there's this alien or extraterrestrial species out there, we could learn to identify with them. But let's just stick with this planet right now.
Cool.
But as we inch away and start to expand identification, so if I only identify with a certain type of food, I have to disassociate from another food. And there's nothing really learned or gained there. And especially when we're dealing with each other as human beings, as I identify, actually, in expanding my identification, I also expand my intellect. Because if I don't expand my identification onto other things and see the correlation between me and another human being, all of a sudden, my intellect becomes my enemy and the enemies of others. Because now I have to defend them intellectually, and I don't expand. But the truth is, as I become more intellect, I realize I really know nothing. And I'm not just saying that from a great quote or whatever. I really realize I don't know. So even what we're talking about here, as I explain identification to something, like I'm sure somebody will make a comment and have their take on it. And their take is right, but it doesn't make mine wrong, and I'm not making theirs wrong either. It's just how I'm expressing right now as we're sitting here on the show. But as I do know personally, when I expand my identification, and what it is I step back from it. I'm not completely disassociated from it, but I'm looking at it from a different vantage point. What is creating the identity? Where's the energy coming from the identity? And that's when I'm putting space between the I am in me and the identification of me. But the identification is necessary to live in this world. Just like, a football helmet, and shoulder pads are necessary for the game of football in order to survive on the field. So it's necessary, but that's not who we are.
I see exactly what you're saying. When I look at identification, I guess I look at it from a perspective of, wow, each of us all over the world are identifying with certain characteristics that we have grown up with, seen in movies, seen on television, heard on, radio, whatever. And so we have these ideas of ourselves. So on the grand scheme of things, you can see, wow, somebody on the other side of the world in a totally different country, speaking a totally different language with different traditions, etc. They're experiencing their ups and downs of life in a whole different way than I am. So I'm looking at all this, and they identify in a different way than I do. So when I see this, I'm like, wow, we all carry these little forms of identities with us, and we all live our life by that identity. So it's like kind of like always having a mask on, and being on this stage, playing in this play. So when you can see that we all have these identities we're associating with, we can detach from that and become aware of what's going on. And so we see, wow, I have been trapped in this identity of a Catholic, middle class,
whatever religion or whatever sector you're from,
exactly.
Whether rich, poor, doesn't matter.
But you see what I mean? So you can see these self-created identities that roles essentially that we play in our heads, and then we succumb to it. Oh, I'm this. I was raised this. No. What you were raised, this is a series of stories and ideas that you are carrying with you and saying is you, that it's not. You can take a step back from that, and you can become aware of, wow, this is how the majority of the world functions. They stay within these roles, these identities, and we don't ever step outside of it to see, oh my goodness, I'm not just this, or that.
Yeah. And right now with social media, we have a great opportunity to actually expand across lines. And what I mean is no other time in history where we can actually know or come to understand another culture without actually leaving our house or the borders of our country. We can go online and chat with somebody in Indonesia or what have you. And even if you don't speak the language, you could have a translator or just simply watch the culture. And we watch it. It's interesting because we interact with people. Again, when I go into the interaction with an identification that I'm better than them, I'm equal to them, I'll get that result. So if I'm better than them, I'm actually going to look for their faults. If I'm equal to them, I'm going to look for their strengths.
Similarities.
Yeah, similarities, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And as I go into that, depending on the mindset I go into, because that's as I expand my identification, if I start to learn to identify with everyone around me. Now, I don't try to take the whole world on at once. But just your everyday life, you go into the grocery store and you run into somebody, if you're standing in front of somebody at the line, I'm not saying go out of your way, you look like a crazy person, start saying hi to everyone. But if you're in line with someone and just simply say hi, give them attention, because why are they there in front of us? Not to get too deep into the universal laws of why that person were put there and you're missing an opportunity. You'll go crazy with that way of thinking. But yet, if you just interact and expand your identification onto them as if they were a brother or a sister and treat them that way, if you could learn to look at and talk to a human being that you've never met before as if they were a family member, you're expanding your identification onto them and back onto you. And then you start to learn more. And this is what we call expanding the identification, is who am I? Well, identify, well, that isn't somebody I know, so I ought not to talk to them. Where did we learn this? As kids, don't talk to strangers. Why? Because we don't know what they're about. So we were created to shelter, and a lot of the issues that we do have is because of that. And so if you have that issue of identification in a very limited way, and then you become empowered, you can be a very dangerous human being, because then you have the ability to strength over other people. But it's only when we start to expand our identification and can see ourselves in everyone and then become empowered with knowledge, we then expand to a higher place, one of not destruction, but one of collaboration.
I see what you're saying. If we're so narrowly identified with this, and that, then we discount everything else.
We
and we
must
say,
conquer,
this is not good. This is not like, this doesn't fall into what my idea of correct or right is.
Yeah. And we were taught this, kids in school are taught to get as high a grade as they can. And it's always based on the other kids in the class. So if you're in a class of 28 kids and you find out that you did the worst on the test, you're the 28th in the class. And the kid at the top. So we already set this system up. It's throughout the world. It's not just here in the United States in the West. It's throughout the world. And we already create that. We create boys against girls. Boys are stronger than girls. They're faster and all this other type of stuff. And it's a narrative. It's an identification thing. There is an empirical truth to it. But what happens is, in the field of that limited identification, when you study within that field of limited identification, you will find that truth. Because that's, if I'm in the basement of a building, I'll only find what's in the basement of the building, and I'll be correct. But if the building has 150 stories, there's so much more to it. But if you only think the building is a basement, you're not going to see the 150 story. You're not going to see the roof of the top of it and the skyline of the city which you're in. So you would be correct in the study of the limitation, but you're only from a limited viewpoint studying. So therefore, men are stronger than women. But that's not empirically true. And we're starting to break past that.
Well, this is littered throughout history and science, what you're saying.
Yeah.
We study things from a certain perspective, and we always find the answer for that. This is why we told people cigarettes were fine during pregnancy. Because we saw, this cigarette is making this woman relax during her pregnancy, and relaxation is great for the baby.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? We take these limited standpoints, we prove it true, and then we run with it.
And the truth is, like, if you, depending on the studies they did, but when they did that, like, I think to some belief they were truthful onto that. It did help her relax.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
But you see what I mean? For every study that gets published, you can turn around and perform that study with a different hypothesis focused on whatever outcome you are looking for, and you will find it.
Yeah, you will.
This is how it works.
Yeah, and so, like me and Mike are here to talk about this stuff, but please do not take our word for it. Look it up yourself. Because it's, again, what we're talking about here is for you to mull over. Do not take our word for any of this stuff. But look into it and exercise it onto your own. And you'll start to see some correlation and truth in there. And the truth is that all truths become true based on your belief onto them. But as we start to expand our identification, so does our belief structure.
Well, like an example with all truths are true. And I don't like to use an example like the politics, but like this is a very easy way to see this, okay? We all know people who are very much so on the right, very much so on the left, right? Each of them believes their viewpoint is 100% absolutely right. Yet we're all existing in the same world, all going about our life. Nothing is one way or the other. But still, both sides 100% see the way they do as the only way and the right way. Yet they both coexist at the same time. If one of those was absolutely true, then the other would crumble. The other would fall. There would be too many. Anything you look for, anything you search for, you will be able to find.
You will. And so, but then we come to understand is why do we want to expand beyond this? Because it's not working. And some people will believe on this part or this side or believe on that side. They believe the reason it's not working because they won't go along with us. But I'm like, are you willing to go along with them? It's like, no, because I'm right. It's like the argument every relationship has, right? But
that's what we do.
Yeah. But there is a point, a balance point, where both of your arguments or things can put together in the laws of polarity. So even if you look at I have this talk with many people before, and they even some people sometimes they're like, "Are you conservative or you're a liberal?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm both." And they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, every human being wants to liberate from where they are. A millionaire wants to liberate to be a billionaire. All right? In order to do that, you have to understand the conservation of principles and laws that play in this game. So that would be the understanding of the conservative aspect. So if I understand the law of mathematics, I can, and almost to some degree, like you look at like a Dave Ramsey, he'll state that it's not how much money you make, it's how much you save. So that's a conservative principle. But by saving the money to a certain degree, when you get to a certain point, you'll liberate yourself out of poverty or where you once were, even if you made the same money 15 years ago. If you save in these conservative principles, if you do what he does, you'll liberate yourself financially to a different place. They both work together. They're not separate. But somehow we try to separate them. It's very funny. It's like separating breathing in and breathing out. I'm like, it ain't going to really work for you. It's you're going to pass out. They both complement each other. But you have to understand what they're for. When you have a conservative principle, you then know how to liberate from the place in which you're in. And as we start to loosen up and understand this, as we start to broaden our identity, so when my expansion of identity is like if I say I'm a liberal, well then I'm limiting my identification. But when I say I'm both liberal and conservative, I'm expanding my identity in that aspect. So then I go out into the world and everyone's my friend. Now, I have different aspects of friends, like you and I are here doing this show, and I have friends at the gym and at work and all this stuff. One isn't lesser than the other friend, but when I expand into it and I give my attention to whoever I'm with at the time, I'm not like, yeah, I can only have a half a conversation with you because my best friend won't allow me to tell you the whole thing. And even why kids they come to a term where they want to have a best friend is because they're taught limited views. It's a very interesting thing to say, who's your best friend? It's like, what? And then all of a sudden you make the kid identify with who their best friend is. And then when the best friend doesn't see it their way and their best friend is Jimmy and his is Luke, it's like, why aren't they my best friend? And they get upset. I'm like, you're always best friends with the person you're with, if you can understand how this works. You know, I remember talking to, this is a conversation I was having with Karen early on in relationships. And she's probably going to freaking kill me for this one, but I'm going to throw it out there just for a point.
Yeah.
All right? Because we all get stuck in this thing, and it's not that she was stuck in it. We both stuck in it. But, I tend to work a lot, and I ignore other people's, or used to ignore other people's needs or wants to hang around with. But I remember one time she said, I feel like I'm third on your list. And I remember thinking about that. And I'm like, okay, I can see why she feels that way. But the truth is, when I'm with a client, they're number one. When I'm with Karen, she's number one. When I'm with my son, he's number one. When I'm with my parents, they're number one. When I'm with you, Mike, you're number one. There is no 2, 3, and 4. I don't have that type of list. But when I'm with somebody, and this is where I get caught up, I'll get so involved in what's going on to excitement. I forgot to call her to tell I was being late. So there is a bit of inconsiderate from my part. So I've learned to do that. But at the same time, I don't sit there and worry when I'm with you, oh, shit, I got to go tell Karen, because that would be disastrous. Because what would happen is I would defer the conversation that you and I are having, and then I'd be pissed at Karen for making me call her. All right? And again, this is a trait that all human beings, I did the same thing.
We all do.
That's how I can identify it. But my identification now, as it expands, as I start looking at everyone, and again, I've worked at this for many years. The way it first came for me, identifying with everyone being my friend, is, I'm Catholic, and it's been a while. Like I was in my 20s, so like 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. It was Lent. It was Ash Wednesday.
Really?
Yeah. So we go down to church, and I just go through the motions. You go down there, get the ashes, and sit there. And I remember the priest going, as Catholics, we like to give up stuff for Lent, for 40 days. And he goes, instead of giving something up and being miserable, he's like, what does he have in store? He's like, why don't you add something to your life? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to add something to my life. So I thought about it. I'm like, okay. And I was just like a lazy bastard. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to say hi to everyone I see because I can do that.
There you go.
Well, 30 years later, I still do it. So it was interesting is because prior to Lent, I would give something up, but after the 40 days, I was all over it. I became a glutton back into the thing. But after 40 days of every time I was at, go to the store at the register, I would say hi, and if they had the name, I would
by name.
How's your day going? And I would just do that. I wouldn't try to go into a full-on conversation. I realized they're working, but a lot of times they would engage. But this became a habit. And I remember my son, he was, I don't know, like 5 years old, and I always drag him around with me as a kid. When he was a kid, ever since he was, I'm always going places. One day he was like, "Dad, is that your friend?" And I was trying to explain to him. He might have been a little bit younger, maybe at 5 years old. But I remember saying to him, like I didn't know what to say. I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Man, you got a lot of friends." And I started laughing, but I just bent that person, probably never see him again. It was a store we never went to, but I engaged. But I've learned some interaction with people when I started engaging. And at first I was doing it because it was like, I had to do it for Lent. It's like, okay, God's not going to strike me. I got one more year to get this right. But then after, I forgot when Lent ended, because what I got out of it was amazing. So then when I walk into a store that I frequent, people are like, "Hey, Frank, how's it going?" And all of a sudden, I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" Other people are looking at me. And I'm not saying I'm not the only one that does it, but I would go out of my way and like, "Hey," because I was really interested. In the beginning, it was going through the motions. Mm-hmm. "Hey, how's it going? How you doing?" I would force myself to do it. But after a while, it was no longer going through the motions. Now it was just natural. "Hey, how you doing?" And it's amazing the gift you get, because when you see people, if you just call somebody by their name, expanding my identification and allow myself to do it, because before I wouldn't do it. If I didn't know the person, I didn't talk to them. Little interaction as possible. I'm from New York.
True New Yorker.
We don't talk.
Yeah.
I remember I had this friend growing up, and he moved into our town, and he was like, I don't know, moved in like 5th grade. It wasn't until 7th grade where I let him be my friend. It was like 2 years. 2 years of vetting.
True New Yorker.
2 years of vetting. All right.
2 years.
Come on over. Yeah.
You're good now.
Yeah. That was Frankie expanding at a young age.
That's
it's
funny,
like,
bro.
you passed the litmus test, You didn't call the cops on me. All right. Let's get together.
All right, you're cool.
Yeah.
You're cool.
You passed the test.
That's funny though.
Yeah. But it's how we're taught to think, at least.
No, I know
in
what
my
you mean.
world, and again, a lot of people.
And it depends where you grew up, when you grew up, all of that.
But if you didn't know someone, you looked at them like they were out of place. But why is that? Why do you do it? Because we were just taught limited contact or limited identification. But as we slow, and I tell people cautiously, expand slowly. So when you identify with your family, well, then identify with your neighbors being family-like, and you expand onto that. So you go from your family into your neighborhood, and as you start expanding, you realize the world then becomes your ally. And when your world's an ally, you're always fully supported in any aspect you want. The more people you know, the more avenues you have to go down to experience and explore. It's weird. And I don't mean, there are people out there that come from a business aspect where they try to know everyone to see what they can get. Don't do that, because people could pick up. I know people do it, and I'm like, dude, stop doing that. You look like, they can tell you're not your friend, but you're trying to get something. You see something they have, and you want part of it. Don't do that. But those things will happen, but that's not the intention. The intention is because I can learn something from you. And you can learn, it's not much you can learn from me, but,
No, the intention's simply expand.
Yeah.
We're
organisms. We're organisms that when we give attention on someone, we connect to someone, we expand together. It's an amazing feel. It feels great.
I like that you use the word organism, because that's exactly what we are. That natural building upon each other, like you're talking about, that is this whole thing we call life.
Yeah.
It's just an expansion. We are all one source, and we're all experiencing that one source in 8.8 billion different ways.
Yeah, and we're meant to expand. We can't hold it back. But whenever I talk to people, like, hey, it's like, last night I went to a bar and I started talking to this person I never met. And it's funny, they don't tell me like had a great conversation with their friend they've been known for years. It's the person they ran into they never met. Why? Because there was no anticipation. Like when you're with a friend for years, it's like, yeah, he's going to talk about how his, the work sucks and stuff like that, or how great work is and mine isn't. But when you run into what we call a complete stranger, they're not really a complete stranger. You just forgot who they were, so to speak. But when you sit in front of them, there's something that happens that expands your world, because you actually have to be more conscious. Because if you're hanging out with a friend they've known, a lot of times you could look on your cell phone, not pay attention, If your buddy's like one of mine, you freaking elbows, hey, we get off a goddamn
daydream.
phone. Yeah, But they wouldn't get upset. But you wouldn't do that in front of a stranger because they would have your attention. And all of a sudden, something miraculous happens. We start to expand. And then you get into it. It really is. But that's what we're talking about here with expanding identification. When you could start identifying with other people and separate from your limited identification, you find the connection in all human beings. Hell, you could even identify with a tree.
Absolutely. A tree is living.
Yeah, it's living. I'm not
Any
saying...
living being we're connected with.
Yeah, exactly. So when we start to do that, we learn stuff, outside nature, because we are nature, but what we call living nature, or organisms outside of us. They're really not outside of us, so to speak. We're actually experiencing them in. But as we start to identify it, they teach us something as well,
Well, like you were saying, we're nature. It's so weird how we create this idea of what a human being is. There's cultures, in this world where you're born into a tribe and you're just there to be.
Yeah.
There's no responsibility. You don't have to make any money. You don't have to start a family. No. That's what is that? That's all mind-created, man-made created ideas that we have developed as a society. And we live on this little concrete slab. We don't even touch the earth anymore when we walk out. Like our feet don't even touch the earth. We're actually walking on top of a cement coat that touches the earth.
Yeah, with substance that we put together.
So we're walking on top of a man-made earth. So all day long we're interacting in these built structures. Everything is a creation by us humans, right?
Yeah.
And are humans flawed? Oh, hell yeah, we're flawed. So why would this system not be flawed? It's absolutely flawed. This was created by people that said, oh, this is the way to do this. This is the way to be happy. Oh, in order to accomplish this, we must do this. And we're just all full of shit. And we're just trying to we're making up these stories and going, yeah, that worked, so that must be true. Yeah. And so we keep applying this. The reason we see through this crap at a very young age too often is because it's all created. Like half these ideas that we live by, you have to go to school, you have to get a job, it's all bullshit. Yes, of course we need to eat, and of course we need to, supply for our families or whatever. Those means will come to us. We will have an opportunity if we allow to work within this free flow of life. Yeah. But to think that we have to check off these boxes that have been developed and created and then rearranged or updated over the last 50 years, it's a rat race. It's foolish.
It's almost like a game. And I mean this from the sense, like try to make it light. Like, as people like, oh, we've been lied to. I'm like, kind of do it like how, like when we were kids, a parent were like, they want to sit around and not have the kids complain. So, hey, go out in the field and find me a 4-leaf clover, right?
A joking.
Yeah. So if you came back too early, you were a lazy bastard. If you came back too late, you were dumb as hell. Like you idiot. They're on 4-leaf clover. But it was this game, and you learned something that day. Like, oh shit, you realize they were messing with you, and that's how I look at the world. So I don't think the world. You can look at it as cruel. I think I'm like, wow, the world is trying to fool me. But how do we know we're being fooled? Because when we were young, and I'm not a psychologist, but up to what age? At 5 years old, was I aware of my physical body and how it looked? No, I used it. I ran around in the jungle gym, whatever. But I wasn't aware. Wasn't aware my hair was out of place, and Sally's looking at me and thinking like, oh, that guy has 6-pack abs.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, I started being cognitive, 6, 7 years old, and people started laying out, if you want to be popular, you must have this type of clothes. You must look this way. You must have your hair this way. And it's almost like the world going, hey, go find me a 4-leaf clover in the field, and you go do it, and you do all this shit, and you realize nothing's really working. It's like, so stop doing that. Now, it doesn't mean you don't do
We've been
the
told a
5-minute
bunch of
ab
shit.
crunches. It doesn't mean you don't do the 5-minute abs or 10-minute abs.
Whatever. There's probably both.
Go for it. But now when I do it for the experience, not for the output of Sally's going to like my abs. Karen, there is no Sally. This is back in 5th grade, all right? All right.
You were getting jacked in 5th grade.
Yeah, I was getting jacked in 5th grade.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, my dad made me do push-ups even younger than that. And I just did them to get the hell out of my room. Like, he said, come on, get up, do push-ups. I'm like, Dad, it's Saturday, it's 6 in the morning. He's like, come on, you lazy bastard. And he would sit there and like, come on, look, I could do more than you. I'm like, I can give a shit.
I'm so tired.
Yeah, but you know what? When I did them, he left the room.
Hey.
Yeah, so I got
Win-win.
up and did my push-ups, yeah.
Got the blood flowing.
Digression, that's what it was. So that was a limited identification I had as a child. But before that,
it's those little things though that shape us and give us these ideas and these stories.
That's why we understand there's something wrong here, because when we were kids, we didn't have the ability. We weren't identifying yet, but we were aware.
But I remember very distinctly being like, "This is not right." As like a kid, like I'm talking like young, like you're saying, probably 7, 8, 9, 10.
When you started how to identify.
Yeah, just being like, about certain things and people and the way things were said and that things we ought to do or had to do, and I'd just be like, what? Why? And I really believe this is why I developed like a passion at a young age where I really loved punk rock music. I thought punk rock music was the epitome of freedom. Yeah. I loved it. I was like, these guys are so free. They don't have to think about what they're saying or how they say it. They're just being themselves. And I so associated with this, with rock music, rock and roll, punk rock.
All art does
all
that. All art, yeah.
It was, you're totally right. All art does, because
guess what?
You can see it in all sorts of artists.
And we're all artists.
Absolutely.
There's not a medium out there that's
But I think everybody kind of has this gut feeling. They just say to themselves, oh no, this is just how it is. You'll get used to it.
What it is they're out.
But we all kind of see through.
They're out in the field thinking there is a 4-leaf
kind
clover.
Of fishy.
They're out there like, I'm sure, like everyone's leaving. I'm going to find that 4-leaf clover and win the $20 million. I'm like, there isn't any, so to speak. I remember someone says, actually, do you know there are 4-leaf clovers? I'm like,
are there?
I don't think there are. I'm like, I must, But anyway, the point is, you're looking for something that doesn't exist in that field, and that's what happens.
But that's what we're all doing. We're all looking for something that doesn't exist, and we're calling it happiness.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll find it when I get there.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, as soon as I get this, as soon as my family's in this house, as soon as I get this job, as soon as my kids turn this age, guys, no.
Yeah, and
you are now in the program of it will get better when, and then you will change that program to a different expectation as soon as you accomplish whatever you say. This is when I'll be happy.
And that's when we start to disassociate from other people and actually limit our identification, because I have to find the 4-leaf clover before you do.
Yeah,
because I realize they're rare, because I can't find one just in a whim. And it's like, because it doesn't exist. So we're actually creating a field of competition, trying to get ahead of an illusion of an idea, as illusionary as the 4-leaf clover is. But when I came to understand this, I didn't get upset. I laughed my ass off, just like I laughed my ass off when my dad made me go do stuff that wasn't necessary. But I learned something.
This Bob Marley quote that
Bob Marley quote.
Well, this is one of my favorites.
Oh, I love Bob Marley.
The day you stop racing is the day you win the race.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
I put on my phone background.
There you go.
I liked it. Yeah. But it's so true. We're caught in this idea of having to be somewhere in order to accomplish something, or be someone in order to be happy. You're chasing a fictitious idea inside of your head. Yeah. You're chasing an idea of what the perfect person should be based on media, based on your friends, based on your family, based on what you heard on the TV. We're chasing these fictitious ideas.
Yeah, because the identification you're having now is the outside world. And the outside world is a replication of what happened within. So you can't change it. It's like, thinking if I break a mirror to fix my hair, it's not going to work. I don't know if did I ever tell you this in the story form? I remember I was up in front of, I got invited to this group of business people to do a talk on my book. And this story came to me. I was trying to make a point on where we came to the identification with the outside world and looking to the outside world. And the story goes like this. I went into my bathroom, I looked in the mirror, I did not like my hair. So I took the mirror off, discarded it, and went to Home Depot, purchased another mirror, put it up, looked in the mirror, did not like my hair. Took that mirror down, discarded it, went to Lowe's. I'm like, okay, they better have a better mirror. So I went to Lowe's, found the mirror, went home, put it up, and I'm like, damn, I still don't like this. I got one more place, a local Ace Hardware store.
There we go.
So I discard the mirror from Lowe's. I go to Ace Hardware store, pick up the mirror. Now I'm just frustrated as hell. So I rolled down the window to smoke a cigarette so I wouldn't fill up my car. And upon doing that, the wind blew across my car, changing my hair. And when I put the mirror up, I'm like, that's it. So I call all my buddies up. I'm like, if you want a really good mirror, go to Ace Hardware store. Stay away from Home Depot. Stay away from Lowe's. But what you don't realize is, upon you rolling down the window when the wind blew, it changed the structure of your hair. And then when you looked in the mirror, you liked it. It had nothing to do with the mirror. The outside world, you can't change it. You can't fix it. When you go within, you reflect a different image onto it. So we identify with the outside world. It's like breaking the mirror to fix your hair. I'm like, that's absurd. But when we wake up to that, so you go within, create a new imaginative thought the way you want to see it. You look at the world. Okay, I like this. Let's expand, because you can't stay there. I don't like this. Let's go in a different direction of expansion. That's what the outside world's for. I'm not saying disassociate, walk with your eyes closed. But when I look in the mirror and I don't like my hair, I either go get a haircut or I put gel in and swing it another way. I have ample tools to fix it. But it's not the mirror's fault. My hair isn't the way I like it.
These same concepts.
I'm just glad I have hair.
Straight up. These same concepts are applied across life. What we're talking about is, it is never the event that is which makes you unhappy. It's always your feelings about the event. Yeah. Frank and I were just talking about this earlier. Okay, so it's never the event that you're unhappy with. It is your feelings about the event. So what we're trying to say here is, we'll have an experience and we'll say that was a good experience or a bad experience. And then we take away from that experience our meaning. We give it a story. So if we don't like something, we say we need to stay away from it, rather than going within and saying, hey, whoa, what am I pushing up against? What is this resistance?
Yeah, because keep going, but I'm saying that's the limited identification right there.
Absolutely limited identification. So when we have these experiences, right, and we don't like something, we say, hey, this must be bad, and then we categorize it as bad. What we're doing then is, in our subconscious, we're saying we don't like this because of this reason, and so then we carry that story with us, and then this starts to affect everything in life that we see. So when we can see this from above, that what we're experiencing is our thoughts on the situation. As this happens or unfolds, you let go of the attachment to this is bad or this is good, and you see it as just the situation that it is, an experience. You're no longer saying this is bad or this is good. You realize, any way I look at this, I will experience it as that. So you allow yourself to simply be. And that is this state of presence that Frank and I are talking about.
Yeah, and you get to choose a state in which you want. So, like I think we talked about on last podcast, a negative thought will not come into a state when you're in a positive state. When you're in a positive state, only positive thoughts can come through. When you're in a negative state, that's when negative thoughts. So if you notice negative thoughts, it means you fell distracted into a negative state. And once upon that, the negative thoughts will allow you to get out of it. But we think the thought created it. The thought didn't create it. the thought was already there in that state. Just like if I'm in the basement, I can only see what's in the basement. But if I'm on the 150th story of the building looking out the window, that's the view. But I can't see a dark cellar from the 150th story, nor can I see the skyline from the basement. It doesn't work that way. So people think, oh, and then they try to, like, where'd the thought come from? That guy over there.
Yeah, we point blame on everything.
If it wasn't for that guy over there.
And we kind of, as a society, let people get away with this. We say, like, oh, of course you responded that way. That was a natural response. This person was this way. This is why we haven't been taught how to manage our instruments and manage our bodies. Because somebody does something to you or because you don't like it a certain way does not mean that it's a right or a wrong way.
Yeah, and actually, like, even get, like, everything, like, let's get away from being taught. Let's get back to the state of remembering. Because our ancestors already imprinted information into our DNA. It's here, but we have to go inside to look for it. The library is within, not without. So the information without always comes back to us backwards and upside down, and so to speak. We live in a round planet, so if you look at everything, if you take a spoon, if you took a really shiny spoon and looked at it because it's concave like that, you would look at it, you wouldn't just be backwards, you'd be upside down. So the world in which we live in, we look at it, if it was a round dome mirror, you would see not just backwards, but it'd be upside down. So when you're trying to go off of information that's backwards and upside down, you wonder why you're chasing your tail. You wonder why you're putting the cart in front of the horse. You must go within.
The experience out here is why I'm feeling it. It's not that.
The experience out here is just an indication that I'm going in the right direction or I'm not. And if you're not, then choose a different direction. How do I choose a different direction? Go within and expand your identification. So you have to disidentify with what it is that you want to expand upon and let go. Close your eyes to the outside world. You know, I have to turn away from the mirror, so to speak, or do something to change my hair. And when I look in the mirror, it'll look like the way I want it to look. But I have to go within. Everyone's going without, and that's the limited identification. When you're limited to identifying with somebody out there, it's like saying, the mirror, I don't look good because of the mirror. And people would laugh at that, but this is what we're doing every day. But it's not about being taught. It's about letting go and remembering this is who we are. This is who we are. But yet, I do have identifications in order to live in the world. Like, I have to identify with a car to let somebody know, but I'm not attached to the car. You know, I enjoy the car. I enjoy the experience of the car.
You're aware of the identification is probably the best way to say it.
I'm aware of the identification of me.
Because that's what we want to rest as, is the awareness.
Yeah, the awareness, yeah.
You see the game going on. You're not saying you're not going to play in it.
Yeah, no.
You're a witness to the events unfolding.
Like, you think about, like, you're watching a movie, right? And one actor in the movie is a peasant and the other one's a king. But they're acting. But the person who's playing the king, do they think they're a better actor than the peasant? That's absurd. But yet, in real life, if you identify as a king and you get caught up in that, of course, I'm the king. I must be better. I'm like, you're acting as a king. You're not really a king. You're acting as a king. I'm not really Frank. I'm acting as Frank. This is what they gave me. And this is what I'm playing. But at any moment, as I expand my identification to that, I can go into any setting and expand with it. But I don't disassociate. I don't, say I am floating in the ethers by myself. I don't identify with anything. No, I just expand my identification. And in that, I see the correlation and connection. Because everything around me is a concept I'm giving it. We have to, if I see somebody, I'm giving them the concept in which I want to give. And what happens is people are like, well, let me see how they respond. And like, oh, I don't like the way they look. So I'm now identifying the concept in me based on a previous understanding of something that happened. I'm like, wow, it's really going to have, you might as well end life if you're only going to replicate what you already lived. It's Groundhog's Day. But I want to expand beyond Groundhog's Day. Well, you got to expand your identification. You got to go beyond that. Do it one step at a time. That's it. It's not difficult. One step at a time. And you do it one step at a time over a period of time, you've gone a distance. But if you don't, you walk in a circle. And this is the madness that we experience. When you walk in a circle, you're aware you're not going anywhere. You just get freaking dizzy. And we're tired of being dizzy. But when I realized I've been walking in a circle and I can walk a lateral line, and I'm like, oh my God. And I start to laugh. I don't get upset because I'm the one who did it. I'm the one who bought into the fact that there's a 4-leaf clover. And I discovered something. Don't listen to Pops.
I love how you said that just so casually. That I did this. It's so important in this spiritual journey to see your responsibility in every single thing.
Yeah.
In every single thing. Because this was like a big part for me. Like I realized, wow, my life, I took complete responsibility for everything that was happening in my life. And this is necessary.
Yeah.
Everything you're experiencing, it doesn't matter, down to the little everything that you're pushing off and blaming, and no.
Yeah,
it's always back to you. If you find yourself, blaming someone or something,
doesn't work.
That's we want to course correct back on, because it's not the other person's fault. It's not.
I remember Wayne Dyer told us a poignant and funny story, and I'll never forget it. But he used to be a psychologist before he got into the spiritual world.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. And
I wish it was the other way around, but
yeah. Well, that's why he left it.
Yeah.
But he had a client come in one time, a patient. I don't think they're called clients in therapy.
Right.
So a patient came in, and it was a young girl, and she was complaining about all the things that are bad in life, but she was blaming her mom. And after 15 minutes of her ranting, he's like, let's stop the session here and bring your mother in. And the girl's like, what? And this is when he realized, this is not the work I want to do. She's like, what are you talking about, Mike? If I could fix your mom, your problems will go away. And the girl realized that's ridiculous. And it was a great point he brought up. I'm like, if I could fix your mom, your problems will go away. And she's like, no, they won't. Well, then stop blaming your mom and take responsibility. And it was kind of like the point in his life where I was like, what am I doing? I'm sitting there just like, oh, yeah, you should be pissed off. Like, like, why do you feel that way? Why do I feel that way? Because I was told to feel that way on the playground in grade school. If I didn't, I was a chump.
Yep.
What do you mean why I was told this way?
This is how my friends react.
Yeah.
This is how I saw it in a movie.
Yeah. So, but
I'm allowed to feel this way.
Yeah.
I deserve to feel this way.
I'm a guy who grew up in a certain period of time.
That's how this shit works.
It's identification.
It's the ego justifying in our heads to allow us to act a certain way or behave a certain way. And it's not appropriate.
Yeah.
And the sooner we see this, the more easily and lovely our life flows.
Yeah,
Truly.
I remember saying that to somebody. It was I think it was I forgot. It was a girl I was saying. This is way before Karen. Way before Karen, right? So
way.
She's like, when was this? And who was it? I'm like, but I remember like I respond a certain way, and I remember like getting upset at something. And she's like, what's wrong? I'm like, have you not listened to my story?
Truly.
I was raised Catholic, and I had a paper out.
But
of course I'm this way.
That's what we all do. We say, obviously I'm this way, as if that means anything.
My dad was a boxer. How would I not be freaking out? Always ducking and shit.
Yep. And we create it like it's an excuse. Why don't you believe my stories that I carry around with me in my head? How could you not believe my personal stories? Yeah. That's what we're all doing. And
I was holding on to that limited identification. It obviously didn't work out. I had to let go of it with Karen. She didn't let me. She's like, now that Karen looked at it. She's like, well, now that you identify that, let it go.
Thank you, Karen.
Like, why would I want to let it go? Like, if you want to participate in my life,
I like her style.
Yeah, her style.
Hell yeah.
If you want to participate in
Touche.
my life, you must leave that alone.
That's awesome.
So now, I'm in training.
Needless to say, I've been training.
I've been training. Yeah. Yes.
Life's training.
Life is training.
You know?
But we're actually, and it's funny because when you do get into this cooperative place, it's funny because, I'm like, honey, you were right. She's like, yeah, because then they owe you. Because then you like, oh, there's something, I got this. Like, yeah, you remember last time you thought you had it and then you realized you didn't, and I told you I was right. And I'm like, yeah. It's like, well, we're going through that again. Like,
same type of things going on.
Yeah. So now I keep it to myself.
There you go.
Yeah, which I just let it out of the bag on the show. So
I just think that it's so funny because we all do this. We don't take responsibility for the way we feel.
Yeah.
We say it's the cause of something or someone's behavior, and we justify this. And we've been taught that this is okay throughout our lives. When they ask, what's the matter? Billy did this, and then, it must be Billy's fault. We got to go punish Billy. We have been taught that we deserve this and that this is the right way to behave. And so we're actually artificially setting people up to fail.
Yeah.
Like life does, we all know this. It's not fair. It's not nice. It's not this. It's not that.
Well,
of course it can be.
Yeah, but what is fair?
But that's it.
Yeah,
it's
someone's
all
idea
a
of
created
fair. Yeah.
idea. All of this.
Yeah, is it fair that if I jump off a 10-story building, I don't fly?
And this is why you see, all this stuff going on because people on either side think, no, my way is right. No, my way is right. And we're all experiencing essentially the conflict of our minds playing out in real life.
Yeah, and why does one have to be right?
Because there's only one way to be right. We were taught that,
But it's a limited,
there's only one right.
Yeah, it's a limited identification.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's real. But again, it's the 4-leaf clover in the field. It doesn't exist. And when you realize that, you're like, oh my God.
And that's kind of like what awakening
the parents
is.
are sitting back drinking a beer, laughing at those little bastards.
Awakening is that. It's realizing,
yeah,
what I've been chasing my whole life is just a mind-created game.
Yeah.
I'm never going to be this or that. Or excuse me, I'm never going to achieve happiness by going to this or that or accomplishing this. Happiness is simply a state. I am.
Yeah.
I am happy. And then you allow those accomplishments, they gravitate towards you. This is the law of attraction.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't mean you don't do them.
To say you won't be happy until you achieve something is you'll never achieve it. No. And the worst part is you say you don't deserve happiness until you accomplish something. And this is something we touched on last week. But to think that you must accomplish something in order to deserve happiness, that is a recipe for suffering.
It is. But you know what? Suffering is a useful tool, so it's needed no longer. Thanks for that, Eckhart Tolle.
Hell yeah.
I believe he used that one.
That is.
But I just stole it. But I don't think he cares.
No, that's it. That's a great point.
It is. Because when I wake up from suffering, I now laugh. I no longer get upset because that's another form of suffering. But so no one in the world did me wrong. They just sharpened my blade is what they did.
That's it.
So that because there was a certain point in my life where I didn't believe a damn thing anyone said because I was but then I shut out. So it goes the opposite way. I shut out anything that would come in too. So I played both sides of the aisle. Like, you're full of shit. At first I was gullible. Now I'm a cynic. But now I'm in this other place where I want to, okay, I see what you're saying. More of a skeptic. And then I want to experience it. And once I experience it, now I know. And if I leave all judgment aside, it's just an experience. It's great. Now, there is preference and non-preference in every one of us, right? So Tom Brady's preference is to play football. The man was built to play football. He was.
Clearly.
Yeah, clearly. But I wasn't.
Yeah.
Clearly.
I didn't want to be the one to do it. Clearly.
Clearly. Yeah, it would have been funny if you said it.
That would have messed up.
Oh God, yeah. But but his focus, his aspects of focus onto it is what made him last this long in the league. That wasn't a given. But he was made to play the game. Whether he was focused or not, he would have made it into the NFL, so to speak. Would he have made it to 45 and win the Super Bowl? No, but he did because he was dedicated and focused. So what am I destined to do? Well, if I'm not dedicated and focused into the work, I'm not going to see the full length of when I'm here. I have to do the work, but I have to also realize, what is my work? What am I focusing on? There's natural things you're drawn to as preferences. Go for it. Oh, but my preference, there's no indication I can make money in that. I'm like, you can't say it anymore. There are people making money doing. There are people doing stupid videos, and I shouldn't say stupid, but I'm like, really, people watching this shit? Like somebody was telling me about a video. They place a piece of white bread on a wall and videotaped it, and it fell. Boom. That was the video. Like 1 million something views. And I'm like, what? It's like, yeah, people are watching. It's went viral. I'm like, someone put a piece of bread against the wall and then it fell?
We're talking about the wrong stuff, Frank. We just need to go get a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
That'll be our episodes after this.
No, I'm going to toast my bread and make it crumbly. You know what I'm saying? Add a little more drama to it. But
seriously.
But I'm not even knocking that because there, people sit. It's kind of like the anticipation of what. Wait. Well, there it is, right? And I get that. But so my point here is trying to make support and get some monetary aspect in your world. But if you actually enjoy something and you put your attention into it, the money will show its way to you. And then you could present it to the world on, yes, this is possible. Look at me. But can you imagine, like when I was in school, it's like, hey, if you get a video camera and a loaf of Wonder Bread, you can make a lot of money. I'm like, what? Like,
I don't know about that.
What are you smoking there?
Seriously.
The dope.
yeah, the dope.
And my dad actually watched the last podcast.
Did he?
Last night. He was laughing.
That's even funnier.
Off. Yeah, he was laughing his ass off.
That's awesome.
He remembers that time.
I love that.
But so it isn't our job to figure anything out. It's our job to get into it, and it presents itself. But we'll recognize when it works out. You will. But so the aspect of preferential, you know what your preferences are. So go in line that, hey, if you are in a job right now and you have the fear or identify with it, like my identification is if I quit, I'm getting kicked out of my house, I'll lose my family. Yeah, don't do that. But start to think about what it is you like and start to do it on the weekends or at night at work. Just think about it. And then think about what it'd be like to be successful in whatever it is. And then watch things start to show up. It's amazing. The imagination is our connection to God. If we control our imagination in the direction in which we want to go, we can achieve anything within that field. But it's presented to us in a way we don't know. So you can't try to figure it out. It's not our job to figure it out. It's our job to recognize the thing that comes to us as it comes.
Create.
Yeah, great. Create the world in which you want to
live. That's what we came.
Yeah, go within and do it.
Yeah.
And as you expand your identification, if I expand my identification, because if I'm limited in my identification, my imagination is the same day in and day out. I close my eyes. This is who I am. In order for me to do anything during the day, I have to imagine it. Like, people don't realize, like, when I wake up in the morning, I get ready to, say, go to the gym. I have to imagine myself already walking to the gym before I get there in order for me to get there. It works that quickly. We're always imagining in order to perform stuff.
And with no resistance.
No.
See, the issue that we have when we're quote-unquote creating or trying to have that feeling, we've got all these blockages of thoughts of saying, how am I going to do this? How do I get to that point? There's no way I could do that. How can I feel like something I haven't achieved? That's all mind. And it's letting go of that resistance that allows us to achieve or obtain what we already are and already have been in a quicker, linear time. In all reality, it's all happening now. If there was no resistance, it would be immediate.
Well, yeah.
But we have a very deep unconscious, subconscious, set of beliefs of time, how things unfold, etc., that it could throw a huge wrench into the system just to have a dinosaur appear in this room. You know what I mean, though?
Is that what you're imagining right now? It's like, shit, jeez.
I believe that anything is
so
possible.
If I see a dinosaur running around, I'm coming after you, Mike.
I believe anything is possible.
Yeah.
And I think it's crazy to think that the mind could not produce any type of experience for you.
Yeah, because everything is possible empirically, but based on where you are and your limited identification, there is a limited ability of probabilities.
Oh, absolutely.
But as we expand it, because I don't need to eat every meal I'm going to eat for the rest of my life now. I'm like, that's just absurd. I just want to eat the one meal I'm in right now. And I know in a couple hours or so I'll be hungry again and another meal will present itself. Live life that way. Don't try to eat everything at once. People are like, oh, I want to be a billionaire. I'm like, if you had $1 billion right now, what would you do? You'd still pretty much doing the same thing you're doing right now, other than you might have anxiety where to put the money, but you couldn't do anything different. If you were stuck in traffic and you had the lottery ticket and you realize as you're stuck in traffic and you pulled up your phone, you realize you won, you're still stuck in traffic. You don't own the helicopter that can land on your car to take you out of it. You're still in traffic. You still got to deal with the traffic. But what would happen is the traffic would no longer bother you because you were temporarily distracted by something outside of you. This is why people want to win the lottery and get money. It's a temporary distraction. It's all it is. Anyone that's a millionaire, if they're still focused on their money, it's a temporary distraction. And if you had millions for a long time, it's no longer why you're doing it. Yeah, it's needed to get around this world, to exercise the experience you want, but you no longer focus on it. You're not. You focus on what experience I want to have beyond the experience I had. So you're going to keep going. So I go into my imagination. And now that I have all the money in the world, when it comes to cost, I can expand my imagination. But then you're always up against something like Elon Musk. Doesn't matter how much money he has to figure a way to leave the planet and get to Mars. Yes, money's going to be needed. But his great imagination, seeing himself already on Mars, seeing a colony of people on Mars, and having the feeling what it'd be like on Mars is what's going to send him the impulses, and he's going to figure shit out from that point like every other human being that's discovered something. That's how they did it. You have to look beyond the point in which you are. Close and shut down. Expand the identification to who you are, and it will show you how to get there. But you have to stop insisting on how. It'll present itself. And you'll recognize when it presents itself.
That's like the biggest point we could probably make.
Yeah.
Is
yeah, we're done.
I mean, the whole thing is to feel as if it has already happened.
Yes, that's the key.
And not have to think about. And guys, this feels great to let go of how it needs to fall into place, because that's where we get caught up in life. Is we say, all right, I want to start a business. I get so excited, and then we say, wait, how am I going to afford to hire employees? How am I going to pay myself a salary? What if I don't? Yeah. It's all of these. I don't know how these are going to be accomplished, so I must stop. Yeah. This is where everybody gets in that block.
Yeah. Because that's the limited identification. So now if I go...
You don't need to worry about that, is what Frank and I are saying.
Yeah, if I go into my imagination and completely suspend from any identification, and then I'm like, okay, this is the person I want to be experiencing this. Now you have to expand your identification into something else. Because there is a part of the identification that's here that still wants to experience that one. So I don't want a completely different body. Yeah, I'm going to drag that body along. It's going to, have better abs. When I get there.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Damn it. I got the house, but the abs aren't looking so good.
Can't be happy yet.
Yep. Nope.
Hey,
yeah, it's true.
That's it.
Right?
That's what the mind said. Can't be happy yet. Don't have the house.
Yeah.
Don't have the job. I just can't be happy.
That's why whenever I go to like Hawaii,
I'm not allowed to be.
When I go somewhere, I have to do it 6 months in advance because I have to go on some type of crazy diet to get my abs going. So when I hit the beach, I'm a miserable bastard because I haven't eaten.
You can't even enjoy it.
Yeah.
No, but truly.
Or wearing a burqa or something like
Imagine
that.
if everybody was honest, and it's funny, like that movie Fight Club, this is what they're talking about. It's the fight inside our heads with our egos, with our ego mind, that identity we create.
Yep.
It's the fight nobody
Brad
wants.
Pitt had some
We
sick
don't
abs
talk
in
about
that
this. Oh, yeah. We don't talk about Fight Club. That's because we don't share the struggles we're going through in life. This is how we're all raised.
Do you know why we don't talk about First Club? Isn't that the first rule?
Yeah, that is the first rule.
That's why we don't talk about it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That whole idea and mentality is why people carry their pain with them and put on a smile. We don't talk about this. We don't talk about the internal struggle. That's my own fault,
Yeah, and you can't. It's interesting. A physical illness, which will come from internal struggle eventually, can be identified with, but the internal struggles can't. And this is why we suffer a lot because we think it's real.
Yeah, and then we blame ourselves saying we deserve to feel that way because we haven't accomplished more.
Yeah, well,
it's a cycle.
Yeah, it's if you can't figure it out, blame is some bit of a slight distraction of relief. It works. It doesn't work for long because you stop running out of ideas or complaints. But if I say, well, I'm not happy because I'm poor, that's a distraction onto being poor. So you get this weird calming feeling, but it doesn't do you any good. It's worse if you're using that excuse that I'm unhappy and I'm depressed, but I'm very wealthy. Well, you got no excuse there. All of a sudden it can be worse. Like, yeah, at least I'm poor, based on the idea of what we look at. Because even I know people are like, oh, I was once poor and now I'm rich. And if I had to choose, I would always choose rich. Because in that mindset, there's more expansion ideas what they can do. But if you still focus on the outside world, I don't care how much money you have, you're going to have just a higher volume of anxiety. That's it. Where when you only had $20 in your pocket, you only had $20 worth of anxiety. We have $20 million, that's a whole lot of anxiety. If losing it is what you're anxious about. Losing $20, I could gain $20 easy. Lose $20 million, oh, whoa. Can I do it again? It's because you're identifying with the outside world. It's limited. It is so limited identifying outside. But when you go within, expand, your identification expands along with it. That's your imagination. And that's what we're here to talk about. Expand the identification.
Thanks for joining us this week, guys. We appreciate you listening in. If you like what you hear, subscribe at the link below. Feel free to shoot us a comment or an email, perspectiveshift2020@gmail.com.
Peace out.
See you next week, guys.
All right, guys.